of time, I thought we could get started. I'm sure others will join us, but I want to honor your time. And it's really great to see you guys. And thank you for being so flexible. I don't know that I've ever had to postpone a class on the day of. So I'm so sorry, but thank you for being so gracious about it. And my son is fine. You guys
Yeah.
have asked, which is really nice. It's just the kind of thing where, the doctor gets you in when they get you in, and then you have to deal with it. So thank you so
Mhm.
much for having that grace. I
Uh,
appreciate it. So,
no
Yes,
problem.
sure,
Totally understandable.
sure.
yeah. So we have today and next week, and then the class finishes. And so I want to open up by just asking, we've had a couple weeks of a gap. How has your writing been? What questions are coming up for you? What do you want to make sure we cover before we finish our time together? Anything at all?
Everything you know about writing, you need to
I
tell
Oh
us.
know.
I
boy.
would do.
Oh, in the next 2 weeks. Okay.
But the way you detail the lessons is really great because it gives, like for me, I'd usually process later. So like if you gave us a writing prompt, it would be me going like, huh? But I like having the class detailed the way you do it. Not everyone does that.
Yeah.
And gives you time to like relook at it, look at it relative to what you're working on and really process it.
Sure.
So
Good.
I feel like in 2 classes I've learned a ton.
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, good. So, as questions come up, just let me know. I like it to be interactive and talkative and all that. I just want to remind you that I have a write along this Sunday. If anybody's looking for more time to just write in community, it's at 11 a.m. Eastern this Sunday on Zoom. So if you're not signed up for the write alongs, I'll put the link in the chat at some point during the class. And yeah, after this class, if there's anything that you want to continue to do with me, I know some of you are, but if there are other classes or ways that you want to work together, let me know and we can talk about it too. So, okay, so let's talk about details. This is one of the best ways to show rather than tell. And so today we're going to talk about write a little bit, look at examples of specific and concrete details. And those are different things. But the more specific we get in our writing, the more universally relatable it is. And so um, you want to think about details, but not overthink it. And that's an important point because, I always say, and this is true for really anything in your writing, is it moving the story along or is it there for you, the writer? So the details, you don't need too many, but you need enough and you need the right ones. So a lot of times during revision, I'm really thinking about, what is the best detail for this particular scene, sentence, or whatever it is. And, you don't want too many. So I usually do like a rule of threes where three details could be like the max because when you go beyond three, it becomes hard to focus on any one of them. And fewer than three may not be enough. It might. Sometimes one good detail is all you need. Hi, Kathy. Um, so think about, as you're writing, first of all, this is usually in revision. Don't be hard on yourself if your first draft is not that specific because just gives you an opportunity to do that as you're going through it. So let's talk a little bit about, some of the things, some of the questions that you want to ask um, when you're deciding on details. And this is all in the lesson I sent to you guys. Do you want me to share my screen so we can look at it together? Would that help?
Hmm.
Yeah, okay,
Sure.
do that.
Yes, yes, please.
Okay, so can everybody see? Yeah?
Hmm.
All right, so we'll go through a little bit of this and then we'll read an example and then we'll do some writing and then we'll probably learn some more, maybe read some more, and we'll do the best to get through it. So I'm looking at this part here, but the details really help to build a specific place and time so that the reader doesn't have to come up with it on their own. So if it's a blue chair or a brown couch or something like that, then they're starting to have a really concrete picture form in their minds, and they can be with the characters in the story exactly where you want and need them to be. So when you're choosing details, like I said, you want to ask, is it important for the point of view character whose head we're in, who's narrating the story, to notice these details, to look at these? Is this something that the character would notice? And it's interesting. I was reading a novel. I just started it today, and the main character, the protagonist is, it's first person, so I, me, my, and it says, I ran my hands through my black hair. And what's wrong with that?
Doesn't matter.
You would note that her hair is black to
Oh,
herself.
right. So she knows she has black hair, but she can't see it if she's doing this, right? And do you ever think about like, oh, I have brown hair? No, like we don't think about ourselves that way. We might think about somebody else. So if I'm noticing another character and I'm the character speaking, then that might be relevant. But to say my black hair, that's for the benefit of the reader. And so it doesn't move the story along. So why is the point of view character looking at those details? In that example, I don't think she was. I think it was for the reader. Number two is, again, which details are important for that character and for the scene or story, which is number three. So you want to really say what is crucial for this thing that's happening right now to move the story along. And then finally, what is the tone, the theme, or the mood that you want to achieve? And the details you choose will help you to set that tone, theme, or mood. And so it's really about thinking it through, being deliberate, and you choose your details wisely at that point. But asking yourself, how does it move the story along? Is it necessary for the character? Is it necessary for the scene and the story? And is this going to set the tone that I want? Those are the ways that you pick your details. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay.
No.
So there's a term, info dump, which I think is really important to know. We all do it. We dump a bunch of information because we want to catch the reader up on what we know about the story. And so this can happen in a lot of things, with backstory, with extraneous description here is what we're talking about, but also in all different ways that we're where we just throw a bunch of information in where it doesn't really help move the story along. So you want description only when it matters and not when it's just for the sake of throwing in a bunch of details. So there's some examples here, and I wonder if somebody would read that first example for me.
I will.
Thanks.
I can see it. Whoa.
You know what? I'll make it bigger. Hold on.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yeah, I just knocked something over though. That's not good. Excuse me for 1 second, will you? Somebody else can start that one if they want to. I just spilled something on her rug.
Oh no. Okay. Somebody else want to do that?
Okay.
Oh, Carol, do you want to do it?
Sure.
Okay.
All better.
Okay.
Okay. The room was small and overstuffed with items from all over the world. Vases from France. Am I on the right one?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Vases from France, statuettes from Italy, wooden shoes from Holland. A bold green and red flowered wallpaper covered 3 of the walls, with the 4th wall a solid matching shade of green. On the wall sat a carved trellis with silk flowers entwined through it. Toy birds perched on top like bright light.
Thank you.
Mhm.
We have a lot of details here. There's no question. But what do you see? What images in your mind from this passage?
Almost
Eclectic,
Eclectic.
international,
International. Can you
love of color.
Can you see those things though? In your mind, do you have a picture of this scene?
It's just sort of like a big mess.
Yeah. I don't
I have no context, so it doesn't really register.
right. I'm not really seeing small and overstuffed. A vase from France. I don't know what that looks like. You know what I mean? What is a vase from France versus a vase from England? I don't know. So yeah, so we have details, but I don't know that we're seeing anything, right? So let's read this one. Can I have a volunteer read this one?
I can jump in. All right. So Chuck gapped. Holy crap, a garage sell threw up in here. Old vases, cheesy statuettes, those dumb clog shoes with the flowers on them. Bad enough every surface had something awful on it, but did she really need that wallpaper? Maybe she didn't know red and green flowers just screamed, I'm way too into Christmas and need professional help. And what that trellis with fake vines and cheap plastic birds?
Thank you. So, how do you understand the scene differently with this example versus the first one?
And certainly get his opinion of it.
Sure.
And
The whole tone, mood, all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, you also know what value based on the point of view, based on the telling, what value things have.
Right.
You know,
For
they're cheesy or
the
they're,
character, right?
yeah.
I'm sorry, Jane, go ahead.
Oh no, they have some adjectives describing the thing as opposed to just saying it was a thing. And yeah, and it now takes some shape and value that it didn't have before, or lack of value as the descriptor kind of indicates. But yeah, totally different. Mhm.
I'd like to jump in there for a second.
Yes, John.
I think, yeah, you begin to understand something about Chuck,
Yes.
and the more you
Mhm.
learn about Chuck, the more you're going to be able to understand what his relationship is with the person who has the room and decorated the room,
Yes.
and that will explain the dynamic or help you begin to understand the dynamic between the two characters.
You're
Exactly.
100% right. Yes.
Yeah.
And in the first version, we have no attachment, we have no care, really. Like, okay, so why are you telling me this, right? But we're starting to see someone, and we like, I don't know, I'm intrigued. I want to keep reading and see what's the meaning for this, right? You know? So now we have a different version. And who would read this for me?
I will.
Thanks.
The small room overflowed with items claimed from all over the world, elegantly carved faces from France, buxom statuettes from Italy, quirky wooden shoes from Holland, each purchased in a moment of childish delight. Shelves of such treasures lined 3 flowered walls of green and red, facing the subdued fourth wall in a solid matching shade of green. That was reserved for the garden, such as it was. Silk flowers cascaded down a carved trellis, peppered with toy feathered birds bright as holiday lights.
Thank you. And so we have 3 different ways of describing this room. Do you
Mhm.
have a favorite? Like, which one speaks to you more?
I like the last one the best.
Okay, tell me why.
Yeah. I'm going to echo that.
Okay. Because while Chuck may have an opinion,
Uh-huh.
in the second one, you don't know anything about the person who decorated the room.
Uh-huh.
And Chuck can come in as for me, Chuck can come in as a character later on. I want to know about the room. I want to know about that person who decorated the room. And this one actually brings in the description something about the person. Childish delight is the thing that stands out for me the most. And I
Mhm.
see this person as spontaneous, innocent, curious, and unafraid to try things that other people might not like.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah, that's great. Carol?
I really like the second one because I felt like I could actually see Chuck standing there with his hand on his hip, evaluating this entire scene and being so annoyed with it. And there was just something about the energy in that one that just really drew me in and caught my attention.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm kind of the second one too, partly because I like Chuck's voice.
Uh-huh.
He's kind of a little bit of a smart ass, and he just gives personality to the whole recounting.
Yeah. So I think,
I,
yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
I was just gonna say, I like the second one because I say holy crap all the time. So I was drawn right in there with him with what he
Okay.
was talking about.
Cool. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's fair to say that the first one just really doesn't resonate with readers. I think the second and third do, but they're very different. And I
Mhm.
would say that the writer needs to decide what's the purpose of describing the room for the benefit of the story. And
Mhm.
so, is it to introduce Chuck and his personality, and is that the focus? Maybe
Right.
the room and the person who created it isn't, maybe that's a secondary character. So maybe Chuck is the focus and the writer would make that choice. Or maybe Chuck will come in later and add to the story, but we need to understand the person whose room it is first. And so the
Mhm.
writer would choose the third example.
Yeah.
And so you see the details are slightly different. They're not hugely different. And they're not complicatedly detailed. So like we still don't see, I mean, in the third example, we see elegantly curved vases, but they're still not very specific. Like what color are they? What are they made of? Are they holding flowers? Like there's a lot of details that are left out, but I think that we have enough to set the scene for the purpose of the story. Maybe the vase is not that important, and so we don't need to know that it's porcelain or it's crystal or it's whatever. And that's not the point. And so I hope what you understand from this is you choose your details specifically for the purpose of what you're trying to get across in this scene, in this story, and it has to serve the characters and the story and not the author. You know what I mean? So we don't want to put in too many details that don't serve a purpose. You need a reason for it. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah. Any questions about that?
I think, everything you're saying makes so much sense when I hear it, and I never would have thought of it, you know?
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's the thing that's so revelatory and exciting about learning in the way that you teach.
Right. Well,
Mhm.
thank you.
Mhm.
And it's the kind of thing where I want you guys to have these lessons so that when you're writing, even like 5 years from now, you're writing your sixth book or something, and you're saying, I have to remember what to do with details, and you can go back because every single time you write something, there's this re-exploration of your craft, and you get better each time, but it still is hard to infuse from the get-go. You kind of have to understand the process and you have to remind yourself of the process. So yeah, so it's about learning it and then doing it. So
Mhm.
um so I want to say just a couple things here, and then we'll read an example, and then we're going to do some writing, and then we'll come back. So um these are some of the rules for being descriptive with showing instead of telling, just some things that we've already talked about and some that we haven't. But again, it's the character doing the describing, not the author. Think about the black hair and why that was kind of a mistake. It's really a tragedy to have this knowledge when you read books because you see the mistakes all the time. And then it's like, it kind of ruins the book for me. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to see how the book is, but I don't have high hopes because I feel like that was a big miss.
What book is it?
I don't even remember. It's something I got at a used bookstore and it
Huh.
looked good to me. So I'm only a few pages in. I'll give it a chance, but you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I have a context, a judgment now, unfortunately. Um, every detail should be important for the character or the narrator, and that comment should reflect them, just like Chuck's statements reflect him, as opposed to the author really forcing it. So I think that was a great example of it. Um, you don't I like to stay away from the conditional would, could, should. I think it distances the characters from the action, and I think it distances the reader from the story. There are times when you're going to do it and it makes sense, but you'll be surprised how often people use the conditional tense, and there may not be a good reason for it. So if you see this example here, Bob could see from the way Jane was acting she was upset. That's completely telling. We don't see anything. And so and it could even be Bob saw from the way Jane was acting that was more immediate, but it's still telling. And then in the second example, Jane threw a book at his head and stormed out of the room. Now we see it, and
Mhm.
it, the first sentence was the author talking to the reader. The second sentence was the story happening and the reader getting it, and that's really important. The other thing too is, and we're going to talk about different ways to, I mean, all the senses are part of the details that you might want to come up with to describe things. But a lot of times, well, people will say the scent of or the sound of or whatever, and you want to just put the sound in there or put the scent in there. Scent is the hardest one to do, just so you know. We talked about cinnamon, remember? But the sound of a rifle echoed through the valley versus the crack of a rifle shot echoed through the valley. That's way better, and it's just a little tweak, but now I can hear the sound that I need to hear for the story, as opposed to getting into my head and imagining what sound it is, and then each of us reading this scene has a different sound in our head, so now it's a different story for each person. So you do the reader a favor by being specific and detailed in describing the sound, so that they don't have to do the work, and they're following along the story the way you want them to as well. All right. And then the backstory stuff, backstory is really interesting, and I struggle with it sometimes too, because I feel like you need to have backstory to understand characters and where they came from, what motivates them, and all that. But sometimes there's backstory info dumps that take us out of the current story and way into the backstory. And so you have to ask yourself the questions when you are offering backstory details. How is it important to this scene, to moving this story along? How does that detail or that part of backstory explain what's going to happen in the book that you're writing, or the scene that you're writing in the essay, or whatever it is? So you just always want to be careful. A lot of times when I'm writing a book, especially, I'll do character sketches so that I understand my characters in a more dimensional way. And I want the reader to know all of that, but it's not always necessary for them to have all those details. So you just always want to say, is this essential for this story right now? Or maybe just some of the details, and pare it down accordingly. Any questions about that? Any questions about any of this yet?
Actually, just real quickly, if I'm not seeing this document in the chat, did I miss it?
I emailed it to everybody yesterday.
Oh, I'm not at home for my email.
Okay. Then
So that's okay. That's okay. Well, if you don't mind putting in the chat, that'd be awesome. Otherwise, I can get it when I get home.
Yeah, I'll do it right now. I'm so sorry that you didn't.
No, thank you. You were sharing it, so I was able to follow, but I know I want to look back.
Okay, no problem.
Mhm.
Just make
Awesome.
sure
Thank
got
you.
the email, because Marie, we don't want to have that problem again. So you let me know if it's not there,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I will. It'll be
Okay.
a few days though.
Okay. All right. Now I would like us to read a piece, which is one of the readings in this document this week, and then talk about the use of details here. So as we read it, this is from Brevity. I love Brevity. I think they do a lot in a short space. But and Brevity is flash nonfiction. So these are all essays, but they're I feel like it's 750 words or less to get into Brevity. So I'm always amazed when they do a whole story in that space. So just think about, as we read, what details jump out at you? How are they necessary to the story? Anything else too that you think is really showing well. So who would like to start reading the first part of Walking with the Widows?
I can read it.
Thank you, Carol.
Okay. How far do you want me to go? Just to
Just
that
go
first
to the second star.
second star, okay. There is a bluebird on the limb of a tree in a yard near a house that is painted fairy tale yellow, like a piece of the sky with the rise of dawn on its chest and a fiesta necklace. I've walked these streets for 27 years, and I've never seen a bluebird. Not here, then here, in the way of neighborhoods. There is a lady on the downward slope, a cane in her grip, eyes creased into place. She wears a salmon pants, a lilac jacket, and exuberant lipstick. Hello, she says. Hello, I say. I tell her about yesterday's bluebird, a phenomenon, news to be carried.
Thank you. All right. Who would like to pick it up from these streets?
I can jump in. This
Thanks,
is Marie.
Yep.
All right. These streets are up and down, loop and bulge. They catch lightning in their trees and hawks. The river when it's raining. I pass the country church.
It's they river when it's raining.
Ooh, thank you.
Yeah.
They river when it's, oh, that's much better. Sorry. They river when it's raining. I pass the country church and the barefoot girl, the trampoline and the side yard bridge, the dog on the leash wearing shoes, little canvas tie-ons. I walked the history of the place this was, the ghost of the inn that was Eminence here, the croquet lawns turned driveways. There had been pyrotechnic displays overhead and the march of a military band and wealth stuffed into Herring's safes. But fires raged and years have passed, and many live where few have been, though still, in May and September, on residual horse show grounds, there is a parade of carriages, Clydesdales, jumper breeds, the smell of cracked hay, the past pressing in, and shortly after it begins, the horse show grounds go empty. Then here, now here, where I go walking.
Thank you. And then who wants to pick up with deer?
I will. I'll do it.
Great, thanks, Janet.
Deer in the bracelet cul-de-sacs by the creek, a great blue heron, irises like islands, the fluff of a foxtail, the boulder of a turtle taking shelter, curbside Christmas Eve luminaries, flame upon wicks inside white wax bags, each spaced the proper distance and sand weighted. And at particular hours, others like me, older women walking. I slow for them, they slow for me. History becoming.
Thank you.
Pheasants on the street, they tell me about the years before I became a stranger here. And then, in time, a neighbor, a mare in a barn hungry for apples, a backyard bird sanctuary stretching all the way to all the way. In where found in gardens, toilet parts, cutlery. They remember where and they remember when, and they remember when they remember their husbands, men once here, but not here. Men no more in kitchens, bedrooms, gardens, men no more on streets, men no more beside their wives, men like luminaries gone dark in the dark of Christmas morning, flame to wick, to sand. I walk the windows. We walk. We carry.
Thank you, Janet. All right, who wants to finish up the last section?
I'll do it.
Thank you.
The night, already dusk. I sit on the stoop of the house that was built on the land just beyond the land of the vanished inn. A hill away from the horse show grounds, not far from the tree where the bluebird with the burned of dawn on its chest appeared and now it seems has vanished. Out on the street a red wagon rumbles. The children perched inside are waving. Out on the street the boy balancing himself above a skateboard turns and sees me, lifts his hands. Miss Beth, Miss Beth, Miss Beth, he calls, a song that sings melancholic. Out on the street, couples talk hush as they walk, and dogs mosey as they walk. And a widow I know by name and not by story walks alone and quickly. And the sun burns down, and the hour becomes shadows, and the shadows become blurring. This is the street where I live, just before me. This is the house where I live, just behind me. And in the house lives the man I love, the light of him still burning. One of us will go first, I think, and then the other. Here, not there. Unendurable, enduring. I slow for the hour. I blur into the blurring.
Thank you. So, thoughts about this piece, which I think is highly poetic, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts at all, but also details, but whatever speaks to you about it.
I found it to be haunting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really did. I really felt like I was transported into a place where you're a part of something, but you're also very distant from it as well. And I felt that I was recognizing a feeling of vulnerability as I was reading it.
Interesting. It's a lovely way.
And also a feeling of aging. I agree very much with what Jeff just said.
Yeah.
I think it's all about life and death and the passage of time, and that everything is born, whether it's an object or it's a human, and it lives through a passage and then it leaves. And when it has to do with a person, then the unbearable nature of watching this passage, the older you get, knowing that your time will come also. And I think the description of all of the objects brings that into the forefront of it's here, it's not here, it's here, it's not here. It's so those are my thoughts.
Yeah. Thank you. Everybody has just great insights on this. Are there certain details that you think were especially vivid or well chosen, or some that you thought maybe didn't do anything?
I had one line that stood out for me, and it was toward the end of it where she was talking to the one widow, and she says, I know by name and not by story. And I related to that so well, because I think we can go through, I'm going to get a little general, go through life knowing people, but not knowing people. So I really appreciated that line very, very much.
I'm trying to find it. Do you remember? Was it I know by name but not by story? That's what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's see where it was. Do you know where it was?
Towards
Keep
the
going
end,
down a
I
little bit more.
think.
Yeah. When she's meeting the woman, I don't know where.
It's up higher.
Yeah, okay. So,
It's like in the middle, I think.
Their cul-de-sac.
Oh, it's actually at the end. It's tonight already, no, out on the street, the wagon rumbles. It's 3 paragraphs from the bottom. Out on the street, Oregon. Let's see.
Yeah, it's the last sentence in that
here.
paragraph. Thanks, Jan.
Yeah.
there we
Yeah.
go. Yeah,
Yeah, I like that line.
yeah.
Yeah, I liked that line too.
Yeah.
I wrote that was one of the ones that struck me and stayed with me. I thought that was very beautifully written and a great way to describe knowing someone in your neighborhood that you have seen there for years and said hello to. I have a neighbor like that lives kitty corner for me. I've talked to her occasionally and we wave all the time and I see her at the Christmas walk, but I don't know her.
Yeah,
And it's just, that's a perfect summation of it.
yeah,
It was beautifully written.
yeah. I agree. I want to talk about, I think it's right here. This paragraph. It's one sentence. No, it's two. Sorry, it's two.
Oh, wow.
3.
Three, sorry, yes. But the third sentence is really long. And I wonder why you think it is, what you think the effect is, and what you thought of it.
You're starting with there had been pyrotechnic displays. Is that
Yeah.
the sentence?
Yeah.
Felt to me like a series of thoughts, kind of like her mind is roaming through the past a bit and what has changed.
Okay.
There had been technically military, so there used to be basically fireworks and bands, and now fires rage. Years have passed. It's kind of the stream of consciousness in a way, and it actually also stuck out because I'd been told don't use semicolons, and there's plenty of semicolons in this sentence.
I mean, she could have just done and, which a lot of people say not to do as well, but it has a sense of, at the end there, the past pressing in. And I feel like the way she treats the sentence, that is the feeling of it, right?
Yeah.
What's interesting is that this is like the wordiest, longest stretch in the whole piece. Everything else, there are short little sentences and some longish ones, but not too long. And it's a nice balance. And I think I've mentioned before, I don't know if I have, but the cadence of your writing matters too. And so this isn't show don't tell, but the effect of short staccato sentences is like intensity, but the longer sentences is like sleepier, lazier, lingering. And so you want to vary the sentence length to keep the flow and the reader's interest. Lots of long sentences can make you fall asleep, and lots of short ones can make you feel really like stressed. So you want to really alter it. But I think, and I don't know that we'll get to why today, but it's pretty short and to the point, and then we're in this big meaty part, and then it gets shorter again. And I don't know. I mean, something to think about if you want to choose to reread it on your own later. How what the effect is. Like what is the art of this in this piece? But we don't have to talk about that today. But I do want to say, they river when it's raining, which is why I called it out. I love when writers take a word that is a noun or something and they make it a verb, because can you see that? They river when it's raining. Isn't that beautiful showing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
it really is.
like when you've seen that. You've seen like streams of water coming off the gutters of your house or the roof or the, over a cave entrance or whatever. It's a really original and beautiful way to say it. And that's just 5 words in that sentence. But there's a case of a verb doing everything and really setting you up for beautiful showing. It doesn't have to be complicated, but it's pretty original,
Yeah.
Other thoughts about this piece?
I love
I-
things like fairy tale yellow,
Yep.
Exuberant lipstick. That
Yep.
was very clear.
Yep.
And then I did underline they river when it's raining. And I liked all the way to all the way.
Yep.
And I don't know, there was a lot of good, like to say lipstick is exuberant.
Yes.
I know what she means, but I love the expression of it's not hot pink or magenta or bright red. It's exuberant.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It's a
it calls
choice.
to mind bright lipstick.
Right. It's a choice, and it's one word for a detail that says it all. But again, that's why we're choosing our details so carefully, because if you said red or orange or coral, it becomes kind of like whatever.
Yeah,
Exuberant gives it some energy, right?
does.
Yeah. Thank you. Those were good ones. Anybody
So I
else?
have a question. Yeah, I have a question before we move on. So, so I found it pretty haunting and quite emotional, honestly, by the end. And I went back trying to figure out what in it drives it to be that way. And maybe it's because I'm a beginner, but I don't know that I could put it to words. So I'm interested in your opinion. Based on some of the comments, I'm going to guess it's the more emotional descriptions, such as exuberant. But I'm curious what your opinion is on that.
I think that it's haunting in the repetition. So things like not here, then here, which has like a refrain. So we have that. We have then here, not here. We have I slow for them, they slow for me. There's like a certain musicality, I walk with the widows, we walk, we carry. I think that is what to me creates the haunting. And also the solitariness of it, like that there's a person, this is one person observing everything but totally alone. And so there's a lot of activity in this town and a lot of memory, but a lot of loss. There's fire, there's husbands that are gone, all these widows walking alone who, I know by name but not by story. There's a sense of loneliness, which I think gives it a haunting feeling. Anybody else have thoughts about that? About why you think it's haunting? What makes it haunting? It's a great question, Marie. I'm glad you asked it.
Thank you.
Anybody?
I think you got it really clearly, Lynn. You're right. There's so many places in there where she's talking about the past as opposed to the present.
Uh-huh.
And and the passage of time. And I think as a human being, I think we all, in some level of consciousness, are aware that we're aging and that we only have a certain amount of time here.
Yeah.
And what are our memories? What are the things that are holding up this table of our life?
Right.
You know, one leg could be a memory of a relationship, another could be a memory of a career, another could be a memory of an accident or a tragedy or an illness. And I feel like she just covered all of them in her own way. And it's, yeah, it's all about time and our time here and the limited time that we have.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the title is Walking with the Widows. So when I first read this, I expected it to be like, oh, there's a whole group of women who are walking together.
Mhm.
But no, they're all walking separately. You don't have a feeling of community here, even though it's a small town. And so I think though, even the word widow, right at the start means loss, means left alone, in the aftermath of loss. And so I think that sets a tone too, right there.
Um,
Carol.
this one, the thing that really struck me at the end of it all, that seemed like a summary, was the street is in front of me, my house is behind me, which implies a progression of time. My husband is in the house. We are still here, but I'm aware that everything is passing, and she's even positioning it in terms of where she's standing exactly.
Yeah.
And the pain, the anticipatory pain that is unendurable, should she go first and becomes a widow. I mean, that just really hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because she says one of us will go first, I think, and then the other, which is like such an obvious statement. Like, of course, somebody will die first, right? Unless you die together. I don't know. Which is a statement that I feel like, okay, we shouldn't have to say, but the way she says it's so striking. And that's a very real human way, what Jeff was saying about human, like we think those things, when you love somebody deeply, you're like, oh gosh, I don't want to lose him. He doesn't want to lose me or she or whatever. Like it's, you think these things.
Right. And I think,
yeah.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think it makes you very aware of the present moment and how you want to treat these people that you love.
Mhm.
You can't really get the perspective until you face the fact that we're all going to die.
Yes.
And that includes you. I mean, usually we're all going to die, but that's all you.
Yeah.
I'm going to be fine.
Yeah, right. But yeah, this awareness of it's going to happen to all of us. I mean, at the end, I'm sitting here saying, "Go in the house, go be with him. He's there right now." Like, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
So,
Stop walking with the widows.
right.
Yeah, you're not one of them yet.
But yeah, I mean, when you love someone deeply, the thought of loss is devastating, and I think she really gets that across in a way that through description. She gets us across through description, which I think is really important,
Yeah.
to remember. But that's what we're talking about here.
So
Thoughts,
one
questions?
other quick, very, very quick side comment on that one. The pictures, and I've noticed this in other stories that have come from that source,
Uh-huh.
they don't fit with the story, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They're just distracting. And it's interesting because I just also recently read a book that the pictures distracted me. They really detracted from the story. And so I found that I would try to purposely avoid or miss seeing the
Okay.
pictures. So that also drove home to me or made more obvious how super important the artist, if you choose to have an artist for the book, that really does matter.
For sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
that was it.
definitely. Thank you. All right, I want to do a few more things in the lesson and then do some writing. And as usual, I have a lot of material and not as much time as I want. So let's jump in. I want to talk about some red flag words, and in every lesson that I've shared with you guys, this is a concept. So they're words that we can become aware of that should indicate when we're going through a rough draft and going to revise that this is a red flag. So if you look at here for description, a lot of these are red flag words because they're telling instead of showing. And so what is great about the red flag words is that once you know some of them and you spot them, you're like, great, that's a placeholder so that I know I can create some showing later on. So a good example of it here is Jane looked scared, hiding behind the car, hands gripping the shotgun. But looked, I'm not describing her. I'm telling you that she looked scared. I'm not showing you. And then in the next example, Jane cowered behind the car. So cowered, again, another strong verb that suggests some detail, some description. And now we understand, so she's like, however you're envisioning coward, it gets more descriptive and we have a better sense of what's happening. We're not told, we're shown. So in each of these lessons, you'll find some of those red flag words, and I'm sure it's not a conclusive list, but it's at least a start. And don't feel bad if you don't remember them all, but just some of them, So like some of the ones that stand out to me are things like decided or decided or believed or things like that. I'm like, well, those are telling words. And so can I show the deciding, or in some way? So just some of these will stay in your mind and you can do that. Now, the other thing that I think is really important when we're talking about details is the senses. And that sounds like a no-brainer, like we should all know that, but I think it bears reminding. We show through the 5 senses, the noun choices, the active verbs, the adjectives that describe qualities, and then of course I say here, going easy on adverbs, because you know how I feel about adverbs. But I think that, the more specific and concrete we can get in our adjectives and our describing words, the more vivid it's going to be. And so let's just take a look a little bit. We're going to go into the senses, but like when you look at, abstract words, they don't show us anything. So when we get concrete and specific, like love, time, beauty, joy, grief, all those, like it's really hard to see them. You have to use these words at times, but when you can get concrete about something to show love, to show time, it's going to just come more to life. And so think concrete, think specific, think numbers, like she called him a bunch of times, or she called 6 times. That 6 makes a very big difference, because now we're seeing somebody dialing and redialing and redialing. We get the urgency, we get the panic. And so the more specific you can get, the better. So let's talk about the senses. So the 5 senses, touch, smell, taste, sound, sight, all of these are so great to be able to use. And you don't have to use them all, but sometimes you want to think about it in unusual situations. So for example, you're writing a scene and it's winter and the person's outside, you could think about what does the air taste like, to really depict the winter. Or is there a sound of ice cracking that could set that scene for like absolute cold or something like that. So I think that when you bring in the senses, you elevate your writing to be a whole other level of specific, and you really bring your reader there with you, which I think is really great. The sun is moving, so I'm going to move. So now you can see me again. Okay. So any questions about using the senses? Have you guys had any experiences trying to incorporate, one or more sense and struggling, or finding one that really works well for you? Like what's been your experience?
I read a book on writing lyrics, and it suggests, and I'm sorry, I interrupted someone.
Go ahead, Jane.
It has an exercise in there for lyric writers that's just called, I don't know, object writing. And you pick an object, this bottle of water, and you set your timer for 10 minutes, and you use all of your senses to describe that bottle of water.
Yeah.
And, obviously it's kind of to no end, except that I really have found it does help you activate your senses when you're describing even mundane things.
Yeah.
So it seems to me like it's a valuable practice, just object writing.
Yes.
And in 10 minutes, you stop, the alarm goes off, you just stop wherever you are, and that's that.
Yeah. I love to write about nature. And I love to hike. I love to be in nature. And it's really a conundrum because when I'm there, I don't want to be taking notes, but I also want to
Mhm.
remember for later when I want to write. So sometimes when I
Mhm.
go on a hike, I'll have a little teeny pocket notebook and I'll stop every so often and I'll just do what you said, for maybe, 5 minutes. I'm sitting or I'm standing and I'm just, what do I see? What do I hear? What do I, what does it feel like?
Now, yeah.
Oh, that I have that material for the future.
Mhm.
We forget when we're not there anymore. So it's a great exercise. Yeah. Jeff, did you want to
Mhm.
share something?
Yeah, I started writing something the other day, and this is a gentleman who got himself into a really bad situation,
Uh-huh.
and an accident, an automobile accident, in which he's sort of over the embankment
Uh-huh.
at night on a dark road.
Oh gosh.
And the two things that came up for me in trying to describe the situation as he's determining whether he's going to live or die
Mm,
had to do with touch and sight,
mm.
because it's the middle of the night in a place where there's no light.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
he can't see.
Oh,
And the only thing he can do to try to find what condition he's in and how to extricate himself is touch.
okay.
So there were only two things that he had available to him. Maybe later on be sound, but right now he had to explore his environment and his plan for extricating himself using those, well, certainly using touch, but not having sight really played a big part to it, because it really magnified his situation and how he would use whatever he had to save himself. The
Yeah.
contrast bet- the contrast was really powerful for me.
Yeah. That's really true too. That I mean, people say if they lose one sense, it magnifies the power of the other senses. If anybody's read or seen the Netflix version of All the Light We Cannot See, by Anthony Doerr, the main character is blind, and her sense of sound is so profound. I mean, it's actually a pivotal point of the story, and
Mhm.
that's a really interesting take because we can infuse in our stories, whatever we're writing, you know, a sense of clarity if we maybe, we don't see, but we hear or we, taste or whatever it is, and we really fine tune that. I think it can make it very special and different.
Mhm.
Anybody else have thoughts about the senses, writing with the senses?
I think sight seems to be the easiest one to capture.
Mhm.
I find it's um, sometimes, and maybe it's just the one that is so obvious that I feel less skilled in trying to come up with ways to do some of the others.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's all I'd say.
yeah, yeah. It's really
What
true.
about the what about the I guess sixth sense, more the emotion or the internal um is that like how do you rank that with all of this?
That's such a good question. And I thought about that when I was looking at the notes and I'm like, five senses, yeah, but because we do have sort of an inexplicable ethereal sense as well.
Mhm.
Absolutely, I think you should try to include that. It's just less concrete. And so it's how do we convey that? How do we communicate that in writing?
Mhm.
And so I think the best way to answer a question like that is to observe it in yourself. So, and this can help with any kind of writing, but if you just sort of pay attention as you're going through your day. Like, let's say you do this for the next 3 days and you say, I want to notice when my sixth sense arises. And you just pay attention. You might come up with something and you can jot a note in your phone or you can put it on a piece of paper. But being aware and then observing, I think, is the best way to sort of learn how you will then communicate it in writing.
Thank you.
Question. Alrighty.
Mhm.
So I would like us to do a little bit of writing today. And we have three prompts. So I'm going to ask you, we'll take a vote. We can do one writing, I guess, period. So it would be like maybe 20 minutes. Or we could do two periods of like 10 minutes and try our hand at something. Um, which would you prefer?
Mm.
I'd probably be interested in the two, but totally open to what other people want because
Okay.
more experience is what I'm thinking.
I'm
Okay.
good with that.
Okay, we'll do two. So for the first one, I am going to give you guys this prompt. And of course, these prompts are in the lesson, so you can always do whichever one later. So the first prompt, I'm putting it in the chat, is to introduce your reader to one of your favorite places. So think about how you can make it come to life. Can you use sensory and concrete details to describe the place so that the reader feels like they're there with you? But of course, you're infusing your values of the place, your passion for the place on your description. So we're going to take 10 minutes. It is 2:56 on my clock. So we're going to come back at, what is that, 6 after? Yeah, right? Okay. Happy writing. All right, so our 10 minutes went super fast. And how did that go for you guys?
Super fast.
Yeah. Anybody want to share, talk about how it went or anything?
I think I kept slowing down, trying to remember everything you just taught us, so that I was backspacing and trying again. Oh no, that didn't work. That didn't work. So I have like 5 sentences.
Yeah, so what's the favorite place?
The favorite place is my home,
Okay,
where we live.
I love that.
Yeah.
Do you want to share your 5 sentences?
Oh sure. Our home sits on a small rise that ends at the cedar deck. Steps wide and low appear next to the cut stone walkway, lined on either side with Bernero plants all the way to the stairs. The front garden announces spring with sprinkles of red, orange, and violet tulips, small grasses, and red rose bushes. The lawn stretches beyond that for an acre, a mix of chartreuse, deep green, and weeds so far away they look like grass. The house itself is a landscape of floor to ceiling windows that from the outside reveal paintings and sculptures collected from multiple travels to Bali, China, and Russia. Inside, a great room that encompasses the dining area with its light gray marble table with black upholstered chairs. A gold vase with white heron sits at the center, the first thing Archer and I purchased as a couple. The brick fireplace holds the focus of that room, the mantle appointed with differently sized candles that flicker.
So much to process. I love that. I think it's okay to have 5 sentences after 10 minutes. I really do.
You think, okay.
I do. Yeah, I think it's a slow burn, you know, like to figure out what details matter. How do you do that? Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I struggled a lot. I
Yeah.
had a hard time coming up with a sound for the running of an engine that wasn't too loud. I must have spent 3 minutes on that alone, just trying to find that word. So that slowed me up a lot. And I kept trying to incorporate different senses into the writing.
Okay.
And just getting to the place took me a long time to describe it. So I don't know that you actually got to where I was going.
What was your favorite place, Janet?
I have a little area in my backyard at the very end where there are trees and bushes that create a little hollow where I'd like to go back and put a blanket and sit and meditate or read. And it's covered over with leaves.
Yeah.
And completely enclosed. And I get to look at our landscaping and it's quiet because it's buffeted in.
Yeah.
There's woods around. There's the sounds from the street are buffeted from the houses. It's real peaceful. And our landscaping is really beautiful. So I get the benefit of the nature back there and the nature from there. So I was trying to describe that, and I needed a lot more time.
Well, I think a lot of what you just said is a great way to start, just to put that all on the page. And then you can go back and add in little details. But it sounds like a beautiful spot.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Thought I might jump in. This is Marie.
Thank you, Marie.
All right. Curled up in the chair, my feet tucked under, a warm, fluffy, soft blanket on my lap, sun filtering through the morning dew, glinting across the pages of my book, hot tea on the coaster, scenting the air with warm spices and sweet cream, warming my soul in the chill morning air. Stardust walking up the arm of the chair, eyeing my book. I welcome what comes next, shifting to open my lap to his bulk and lifting my book in one swift motion. It's useless. With one stealthy leap, he's flopped across the pages, demanding, loving, purring, wiggling, his satin body stretched across the pages, demanding my attention. My heart smiles.
Satin body. That's so nice. Love that. Lovely. All righty.
So I think,
Go ahead.
oh, I was just saying, I think I need to go back and a couple more passes and try to put more senses in. I did try. So I got the smell of the tea, and I tried to do the glint of the morning dew, some of the visual, and the warmth, and his satin bodies. He's so soft. But um, I don't know if I think about the poem or the story we read earlier, that one really had more emotion, more feeling to it, and I don't know that I got that. I don't think I did. So
It's a free write. It's just a first draft, right?
yeah.
You can always go
So
back.
would it be through putting more emotion in, maybe also more of that sixth sense?
Well, actually, I would encourage you to put more concrete details in to just like
Okay.
paint that scene. Like, what is happening now? What do I feel here? What do I hear? And I would caution you to be hesitant about words like soul and heart. Those are those
Mhm.
abstract words that can be really hard to relate to because how I understand soul and you understand it might be different. Now we're in different stories.
Okay.
So see if you can stay within the concrete and slow it down. And so when you slow it down, it's more like minute by minute. And so his satin body, what does it do? Take me through 3 sentences that, you may not keep them all, but just slowing it down can help you with those details.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You'll get more emotion in that for sure.
I just want to say one thing. After reading this aloud, I realized I did the very first example of just dumping a bunch of stuff rather than doing anything that had any meaning. So please scratch that.
So, Carol, it's really hard to hear somebody's reading. Often you need to hear it a few times. But what really jumped out for me when you read was, and I'm going to hack it apart, I'm sure, but the first thing you bought is a couple. That was where I perked up and I was like,
Right.
oh, now I want to know about this couple. Now I want to know,
Yeah.
like, why did
Mhm.
they buy that? And
Yeah.
how long were they together? And where does it sit in the room?
Right.
Like, now all of a sudden I wanted to know everything.
Yeah.
So,
I finally got to the point at the end. So
yeah.
just want you to know I learned something in this session. I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
No, you do know what you're doing, but remember, first drafts are always messy.
Right. Okay. That's a pre-first draft, I think. Okay.
Start with the first thing you bought as a couple.
Messy.
That's where
Can
it's
you
worth it.
see messy?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's funny.
Let's do one more writing prompt. We'll give it another 10 minutes. And I just put it in the chat. So the task at hand is to write about making a favorite recipe using choice details. So not
I
every
can't
step.
cook.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it could
look.
be making a sandwich. It could be
A
ordering.
favorite recipe. Say a
Take
favorite.
it out of the box and put it in the microwave.
If that's what you want. But let me go through the prompt. So, write about making a favorite recipe using select details, like choose them wisely. And you can narrate the process. You can talk about purchasing ingredients or preparations, or you could talk about when it's finished and you sit down to eat with someone, whatever part of that, because we only have 10 minutes. But something to do with like a favorite food, a favorite recipe, whatever it is. Um, an example, when my kids were young, sometimes we made ghee together, which is boiling off the dairy from the butter. And the description was always, that it's done when it sounds like rain on a tin roof. And so we would like listen for that. It was very cool when the kids were little, and it was like so sensory. I don't think we cared as much about having ghee as hearing the rain on the tin roof. So
Mhm.
think about what choice details can really make this dish, this food, whatever it is, come to life. And it could be just sharing a meal. It could be at a restaurant or whatever. Janet, if that's better for you. So, all right.
Mhm.
It's
Oh, I caught myself on fire once. I could talk about that.
you can. Yes, you can. So we'll go until 3:25. Okay. Happy writing.
Mhm.
All righty. So come on back. Let's hear how that went.
I'll go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really have no idea whether I succeeded or not. I tend to think I didn't at all, but I had fun
Success.
writing.
It's progress. That's all it is.
Okay, okay. I had fun writing it because I've just started cooking.
Oh,
After 23 years of marriage, other than boiling water, I pretty much haven't done anything.
okay.
But now that I've retired, it's become um, an enjoyable responsibility to relieve my wife of all of those chores.
Mhm.
So I cook and wash. Anyway, learning to cook is like any procedure I've found in any industry that I worked in, and even in the military, it requires coordination.
Mhm.
So this is what I come up with so far. New to cooking, I find the most challenging part of preparing a meal is coordinating the cooking of all the parts so that everything is ready to serve at the same time. For example, cooking pasta requires knowing how large to make the flame and how long until the water boils, and then how long it takes for the pasta to cook. Um, Meanwhile, roasting the squash or the zucchini, again, temperature and time are crucial. And, and finally, cooking the chicken or fish, again, equals the size of the flame because that equals the temperature. And again, it's usually 7 to 9 minutes each side, but it could be different. So pasta, roast veggies, chicken or fish, oy vey.
Love it. Love it. That's awesome. Anybody else? Janet.
I'll go.
Yeah.
Jim and I had only dated for 3 brief months when I decided to create my maiden meal. His favorite meal was sizzling steak, a fluffy baked potato slathered in butter, crisp corn, and flaky round rolls with the coup de grace moist German chocolate cake. As most of my cooking attempts ended in disaster, instead of delicious vanilla and chocolate parfait, a lemon and chocolate parfait. I steamed the rice until the water evaporated, turning the pan into an unusable scorched mess. That's
Awesome.
as far as I got.
Keep
But
going.
you get the picture.
I want to see the scorch. So that sounds great. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else?
I'll try again. Okay. Judy is moving. Archer and I are here to help her pack. My first job is to make a hearty breakfast to sustain us. I pull open the fridge and pull out an onion, take a whiff. It's still fresh. Watering eyes are the cue. Clue, chop, chop, chop. Now I'm really crying. Since the onion escaped its container, I hand the knife to Judy. Can you help me? I plead. Then I reach into the fridge for the smoked salmon. It sticks to the side of the plastic wrapper and I yank it hard till a patch of it flops out on the counter. Archer likes spinach, so I add that to the mix. I can never figure out how this stove works, but keep turning the dials till I feel the heat over the burner. Pour in a dollop of olive oil and whip the eggs with a fork while I keep an eye on the other pan. I take on the mushrooms, a less emotional task. I toss the onions in the pan, listen to them sizzle. I get out the electric fry pan for the eggs. After whisking them into a froth, pour them in. I add mushrooms to the onions, then the spinach. Oops, the eggs are cooking too fast. I need an extra hand. Maybe I should drive to McDonald's and pick up some Egg McMuffins.
That's awesome. Very funny and very detailed. Sounds like a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you guys have a sense of details and their role in showing versus telling. Try your hand at it in this next week before we meet again for our final week next Thursday. And let me know if you have any questions or successes or struggles, and we'll see what we can do. But we're building, showing step by step, and it just takes practice. That's how we make progress in all of this. And every time we go to write something, the first draft's always messy. So just be patient with yourself. You can do this. So, any last questions or anything before we adjourn for today.
No. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, everybody. Nice to see you.
Thank
See you
you.
next week.
Thank you so
Bye.
Thanks.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Lynn.
Thank
Bye.
you.